As an amateur videographer, I really love watching professional documentaries. And the BBC are experts at big budget, really excellent quality documentaries. So when I heard that they were producing a series called Human about how Homo sapiens evolved and what happened to the other types of humans who used to coexist on the planet with us but don't exist anymore, I was very excited. So you can imagine my disappointment when I found out how they got it wrong. I'm not saying the program is rubbish. Human is an excellent series, beautifully presented by paleoanthropologist Al-Shamahi, with professional archaeologists and other scientists contributing and advising. But this series has a massive, Portugal-sized hole in it. In the third episode, Last Human Standings, when they tried to tell the story of how the Neanderthals died out and left Homo sapiens as the last human species, they left out the first and the most controversial archaeological find in that story.
For generations, Homo sapiens and Neanderthals lived near one another. But how close were we?
Wait,
For
what?
decades, most assumed interbreeding between our two species didn't happen. But in the early 2000s, this was called into question.
No.
With the chance discovery of fossil fragments.
The two bones found in the Oase cave are a legitimate archaeological discovery, but it's absolutely not the revolutionary find that the program makes it out to be. Let's talk about the Lapedo Child, the discovery the BBC didn't want to mention. In 1998, archaeologists in Portugal excavated a rock shelter called Lagar Velho inside the Lapedo Valley in central Portugal. They discovered the remains of a young child buried during the Upper Paleolithic period. This was an incredible find, the oldest human remains discovered in the Iberian Peninsula, and an almost completely intact skeleton. The skeleton was officially designated Lagar Velho 1, but is commonly known as the Lapedo Child. Measurements of the leg bones showed that the proportions were identical to a Neanderthal child. Further measurements revealed that the child's skeleton was a mosaic of characteristics from Neanderthals and Homo sapiens. This led the team to conclude that the child was the result of interbreeding between those two groups of humans. This finding was reported in 1999, including by the BBC itself. The discovery was incredibly controversial. News reports joked about the love child. Both scientists and the general public objected to the thought that these two species could interbreed. João Ziliao and Eric Trinkaus, with many other contributors, published a large book in 2002 with detailed analysis of the skeleton and other aspects of the discovery. This didn't put an end to the controversy, but it certainly established the hybridization theory as rooted in evidence and not just speculation. The BBC itself, in a 2003 publication, cast doubt on the idea of interbreeding, but didn't reject it outright. It specifically referred to the Lagar Velho findings as possible evidence, although not inconclusively proven to be so. The bones found in the Oase cave in Romania that were featured in the BBC documentary Human were discovered between 2002 and 2005. The BBC report of the first discovery in 2003 highlighted their age and brought up the hybridization theory, but also pointed out a contemporary genetic study which seemed to disprove it. The BBC's report on that genetic study again referred to the Lapedo Child. A 2006 BBC report from another discovery in Romania in a different cave again reports on speculation and the controversy about the interbreeding theory. It also refers to the Lagar Velho discovery. So while there were lingering doubts as well as some contrary evidence regarding the interbreeding theory, The Lagar Velho skeleton was regularly held out as an example of an archaeological discovery that fit and supported that theory. Finally, in 2010, scientists succeeded in decoding the Neanderthal genome, which showed that Homo sapiens contained some Neanderthal DNA, proving the interbreeding theory. So the idea that Neanderthals and Homo sapiens met and interbred is accepted as a fact. There are remaining questions and disagreements about exactly how or how often or when, but nobody discounts the underlying theory any longer. Interestingly, the BBC also hosts a documentary specifically about the Lapedo Child on their website, published 2 years before the Human series. So why did the BBC choose to exclude the story of the first discovery that provided evidence for the interbreeding theory from their documentary series? I asked the BBC and several contributing archaeologists about this, but never received a response, so I can only speculate on their reasons.
If I was a follower of conspiracy theories, I'd suspect some sinister cover-up. Maybe they're jealous of the Portuguese discoveries, or possibly in cahoots with the Romanian archaeologists, or some such thing.
But I don't believe in such things, and I like to believe that people act out of generally good intentions. So my guess is that the Lapedo Child just doesn't fit their narrative. The bones from the Oase cave were able to be tested for DNA, and it showed that they had some Neanderthal DNA with them. For some reason, the skeleton from the Lagar Velho rock shelter can't have its DNA tested. So there's no conclusive proof that the Lapedo Child was a hybrid. It probably was. All the evidence points in that direction, but there's no conclusive proof. At the same time, there's no conclusive proof that it wasn't. In my mind, this makes the narrative all the more interesting. Life, unlike television, isn't neat and tidy. Questions may be left unanswered. Doubts may still linger. We may have to go on working with things that aren't completely proven. This could and should make a great narrative for a scientific documentary. For many years, we'd known that Neanderthals and Homo sapiens, people like us, had coexisted here in Europe as Homo sapiens came in and took over territory and pushed the Neanderthals out. But we didn't know what kind of connection they may have had until in 1998, here in Portugal, in the Lapedo Valley, in a rock shelter kind of like this one, but much bigger, a child was found. The skeleton of a child, about 4 or 5 years old, had been carefully and ritualistically buried in a rock shelter nearly 30,000 years ago. Portuguese archaeologists carefully excavated the bones and studied them and quickly noticed things that didn't make sense, particularly with the leg bones. There were measurements of the child's legs that didn't fit with the measurements of modern human bones. But they did fit perfectly with bones from Neanderthal children. And other features came out that didn't match Homo sapiens. So in 1999, the archaeologists announced that this child had been discovered that showed a mosaic of characteristics of Neanderthals and Homo sapiens, showing that the two groups of humans had mixed and interbred. When this reached the public, it created a lot of uproar and a lot of resistance. People were shocked at the thought and said that these were two separate species and they couldn't interbreed. At the time, The common thought was that Neanderthals were somehow inferior to human beings, lesser beings. But then over the years, more evidence came out. In Romania, a few years later, in a cave called Oase, a cranium and a mandible or jaw were discovered that were of modern human beings. But they also exhibited features that were the same with Neanderthals. Finally, in 2010, the entire Neanderthal genome was sequenced, and it showed that nearly every modern human has up to 4% of Neanderthal DNA within them, within me, within us. It's now accepted scientific fact that Homo sapiens and Neanderthals mixed and interbred, as well as Homo sapiens and other forms of humans. And that idea, that knowledge began here in Portugal, in the Lapedo Valley, in the Abrigo, the Lagar Velho.
How's that for a narrative, BBC? May not be as neat and tidy as yours, but it gives credit where credit is due. The Lapedo Child was the first discovery that led to the information that you used in your documentary. And if you don't want to take my word for it, how about the Europeans' Commission for Cultural Heritage?
In 2025, the European Commission for Culture awarded the Abrigo de Lagar Velho a European heritage label, which means it has significance for the heritage of all of Europe. They said that the discovery in that rock shelter of the Lapedo Child was the most significant human remains discovered from the Upper Paleolithic in all of Europe. And that the discovery made in this place transformed the scientific understanding of human evolution in Europe. Right there.
Today, the city of Leiria and its Department of Cultural Heritage are at work to make the Abrigo de Lagar Velho more accessible to the public. They're creating a new interpretive center with a viewing platform of the rock shelter. So I encourage you to come and visit the place where our understanding of our Neanderthal cousins as part of our ancestral heritage actually began. And if you watch and enjoy the BBC's production of Human, as I did, then I also encourage you to watch their own reel and my own video about the Lapedo Child. Links are down below and on my website. And please leave a comment. I'd love to hear your thoughts about these discoveries and about these videos. Thanks for watching.